matter who you are, where you are, what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed, the light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now.
Hi, and welcome to Whole Soul Mastery's Sounds of Circles Roundtables. I'm Marie Moeller, and I'm an author, intuitive, and a host of these special gatherings that are also messages of integrating polarity inside us so that the wholeness and the oneness and the unity consciousness that many of us know we came to live and experience in these times, we are active participants in that process of coming into wholeness again. And I am here today with Renee Tainter and Wendy Kennedy and Diane Jackson and Lisa DiTomaso. And we gathered last month and we were speaking to the energies of vibrational echoes and vibrational redos. And I found it to be a very rich conversation. I actually re-listened to it again recently. And a big part of our journeys right now is acquiring and remembering the language, more the language of sentience, the language of feeling, the language of who we are that has kind of been kept from us or lost to us in all of these centuries of time where we all collectively somehow joined and consented to the cycle of separation consciousness. But now we have to have bridges back into a language of unity consciousness, right? A language of connection consciousness. And I think these vibrational echoes and these vibrational redos are coming back as part of our language to help us make sense of these times. While things can seem chaotic out there, but also in here, it can help give us a sense of empowerment and liberation inside ourselves if we have the words for what's happening to us. And then words and language, instead of being used against us in the form of propaganda and cultural conditioning and the suppression of humanity, words can liberate and words can incarcerate, right? They can incarcerate us and they can liberate us. And a lot of what these roundtables, a lot of what our messages are as participants in the co-creation of a new earth is giving ourselves permission to remember the language of our souls and remember the language that is needed for these times, which means we have to bring it back. We have to bring back the language in ourselves, and we have to embrace language that it can be an ally and it can be a mentor and it can be a co-creator with us in the journey. So we're going to delve a little bit deeper into vibrational echoes and vibrational redos, the opportunities for us right now on a personal level and on a collective level. We didn't have the opportunity last time to talk about some examples, so I really wanted to seed the conversation with a few examples of a vibrational echo, what that can look like in our lives. We gave the example last time of autobiography in 5 short chapters, right? And this particular article was talking about the wisdom of the pothole. So, and the potholes we tend to fall into in our patterning over and over and over again. Those are the vibrational echoes of like something keeps showing up. And we tend to think about those echoes in a negative sense of, right, something is showing up that I don't want to be here. Why does this keep finding me? Why does this keep happening to me? A little bit of the victim consciousness, which can also be, we can also see this through the lens of karma, things finding us again and again through time, through past creations. But I want to invite our listeners, as you hear us speak to these energies today, we can also flip what this is into the goodness of us returning, right? The higher timelines of us returning, the golden ages that many of us have lived in before we entered and descended into this denser realm of separation consciousness. So perhaps some of these vibrational echoes are your highest self summoning you back to itself, right? Whispering in the lower vibrational echoes you might be experiencing as little breadcrumbs to say, I'm here, come find me, right? So it's not just that we have to re-meet unfortunate or unpleasant or uncomfortable patterns inside ourselves, which tend to be what shows up because we're coming out of a darker realm of lower vibrational choices and creations. But behind all those lower vibrational energies and some of those unpleasant patterns or uncomfortable ones anyway showing up is the highest version of you. So in a realm of duality, we have both sets of invitations, right? We have the vibrational echoes of lower vibrational creations, and we have the vibrational echoes of the higher vibrational creations. And in every moment, it's so important that we remember that we have choice. We can be conscious creators instead of reactive or victim creators. There's so much in this topic. There's so much in this energy showing up for humanity. We have personal vibrational echoes going on right now, and we have bigger collective vibrational echoes going on right now. So we're going to all share. I want to hear your perspectives of some of the energy I'm seeding into this conversation today. Yes, Renee.
Could you define vibrational echo? Because
that is such a good question.
I have a sense of it, but I think, it's a kind of an unusual term. So maybe you could take a second and define that.
It's so interesting because I had made some mental notes before I got on this call, and I wanted the definition of what an echo was, right? And I didn't maybe necessarily fully find myself there. It's interesting to spiritualize the concept of an echo. No one's really talking about that. And maybe it's us. We are the ones talking about that. But I did find a couple of websites, just the concept of an echo. This was the simplest definition I saw. They talked about an echo. It's Greek, actually, the word echo. And they said the quick meaning of the word echo is the return of sound. And I felt that energy. Of course, that's the definition that I found amongst a myriad of them online. But as soon as I felt that energy of echo as the return of sound, well, sound is creation, right? And so in a spiritual sense, a vibrational echo is the return of our past creations, right? In the sense maybe that I'm describing them, or the return of our past essence even too. So it can be the return of our past creations, or the return of our past patternings, or the return of our past higher dimensional selves too, because that's ultimately what we're trying to recreate. And I'm going to seed a couple of concepts here. Many on the planet were redoing the timeline of Lemuria and Atlantis. For some people, they don't even know about those civilizations. For some people listening, they might say, oh yeah, a lot of people on the planet at this time are here to redo what did not go so well for Lemuria or Atlantis, because they did such a good job in the battles, right? There was a massive epic spiritual battle in that timeline, and they blew each other up essentially, right? That's why we don't see evidence of their civilizations above the surface, right? There's a lot of evidence under the sea, and there's also a lot of people can talk about, there might be parts of the world that were connected to those civilizations, right? And as a consciousness, but that is a huge vibrational redo because it's a major collective trauma in our energy fields, right? We're all carrying that. And so we want to do this differently. There's something that if people are worried about the state of the world, in some ways we can take heart about the fact that we all remember what happened when we did use serious weaponry of the time and we annihilated we damaged Mother Earth, but in so doing, we damaged ourselves, and we have some scars from that. So there are some bigger vibrational redos to do to come to terms with that, even if it's not somebody's language, even if they don't connect with Lemuria or Atlantis or believe that they even existed. At some level, we are healing the scars of previous creations as a collective that was operating in the time where we were descending in consciousness, right? And we had the power of choice then, and made the choices that we thought as a collective that we should be making. Here we are again in another vibrational echo. A lot of the same players are in place, probably a lot of the same leaders, souls in the bodies of leaders, right? And the people on the planet and the transmuters and the healers. We're all back again for a major global epic vibrational redo, right? We can talk about that. There's in the United States, there was the energy of 1776, where the United States wanted to emancipate itself from the control of England, right? We might be in a time, if you look deeper into all that's happening, this might be another American Revolution. We saw the battle and the elections over the last 2 cycles, right? And it's still playing on, but this may be a bigger crescendo of an American Revolution that we will only understand once we're through it and we look back. But if people can see that a lot of what's going on in our lives right now are these vibrational echoes and these opportunities for redos, and if echoes are the return of sound and sound is creation, we are redoing and recreating from a higher vibrational lens, those that can, in the Great Awakening happening, those who can be conscious creators right now, we can use all of our spiritual tools to create a different outcome. And in fact, to ascend us onto a whole other timeline. And I think many of us who would listen to a podcast like this, and those of us in this podcast right now, we are summoned to that higher purpose. We know we are not going to keep replaying the same echo. We're not going to create what we did again with Lemuria and Atlantis. We are not going to destroy this planet. We are not going to re-traumatize ourselves in these ways. So let me give a very tangible example of a vibrational echo. And it was one of the first times that I actually watched one unfolding that planted the seed of this language in my conscious awareness. And I began speaking about this since then. And so it was probably early in the 2000s. I was here at my house. I live in North Carolina in the United States, and it's very foresty. There's a lot of nature, and I have a lot of big rocks around my property. And my kids were really small then, and they played on those rocks, right? So, like any kid would want to, right? They're pretty cool rocks. They're boulders, actually. So one day we were out there like we always were, and I saw a snake, a copperhead, no less, wrapped around the bush where my kids always play, right? And I saw that, and I was pre-awakening at this stage, okay? Hadn't had my greater awakening. I didn't have this language, but I was very empathic. So I felt the snake. I never intend harm to any being. Even then, if spiders got into my house or something, I would try and release them, right? Not everybody does that, but I do. Even then. But in this moment, there was this snake, a significantly sized copperhead, right, around the bush where my kids play. And I saw it, and it stayed there for like a couple days. Like it was becoming its home, its habitat. Why wouldn't it? Because there's this awesome boulder right next to it with this perfect little space to go under, right? And to hunt and to do all the things that the copperhead needs to do. But she wrapped herself around that bush and she wasn't leaving. And so I remember saying to my boys when I saw that and they were out the next day, I was like, okay, I need to deal with this. But I didn't know how to deal with this because I didn't know how to say snaky, snaky. Can you just please, go on your merry way? No. But so what I did is I went and I knocked on the door of a neighbor who he's like a birder. So I know he's deep into nature, and I thought he'll help me. Right. And I was explaining to him, I didn't want to hurt the snake. I just wanted to know if he could help me remove the snake and relocate it right somewhere. And he said, sure. And I wasn't close with this neighbor, but he agreed to help me, and I was grateful. So he comes to my house, walks down the street and comes to my house, and he has a shovel, and I'm thinking just for protection or whatever. But in an instant, he had killed the snake. He didn't really, I don't know if he even had a plan. I'm sure he was thinking he was going to protect my family. And that's what happened. I was shocked. And my kids we were all looking like, I wonder what he's going to do. I wonder how he's going to relocate the snake. And he didn't relocate the snake. He killed the snake. And it was shocking to me because my intentions were there, but clearly not strong enough, because in the conscious creation that I was doing, I had somehow given my power to him, I think at some level, to decide the way the snake was going to get relocated. And it did get relocated. It died, right? So my intentions weren't clear enough. And so anyway, that experience, I remember that day, and I don't want to be graphic, but when snakes die, it's not an instant death, or their bodies kind of shake and quiver for a little while they're passing away. And it was traumatic for my kids. Like, I had to even have my kids like, whoa, that was shocking. I pulled them away from this situation. And I just said to myself, as a mother, I never want to go through that again. I don't want to model that for my children. There's got to be a different way, even though I still didn't know what a better way was. And sometimes we just have to admit that we don't know what we don't know. And we have to allow things to unfold, but we will learn from them. And so even though I wasn't really awake then, I set the intention that if this ever happens again, I will do this differently. That's my higher self saying, you will do this differently, and this will come again. I didn't know that then, but that's what was set, like it was seeding in my experience that I would do it again. 10 years pass, about 10 years pass. I never have another snake like that, even though we live in a very wooded area, never had that again. I'm out one day and I see a snake wrapped around the very same bush, right? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Vibrational echoes and these vibrational patternings that show up again for us to have the redo, they may not always be exactly. This was very clear. Spirit was really trying to say, okay, here's your moment, right? Here is your next practice session. But it was a replica of the same exact situation. And I could recognize it. I'd say, oh my gosh, it's here again. My kids are older now, so they're not little tiny tots, but they're 12, 10, 11, 12. And I could ask them to be my helpers. And so I was like, first of all, we need to not go near the snake while we just think up a plan. I was more awake then, and I was calling in spirit, and I was already talking to the snake. I was already communicating my intentions and shared this intent. Number one, thanking it for being so beautiful, appreciating it, that it felt comfortable on my property, or the property that we steward, right? I was connecting with it and saying, but we need a different situation here, because I still have a young family, and this is not going to be the best situation for you to stay around this bush, right? And so in the end, I'm calling in other options. And I knew I could call places like Critter Control, but they were all telling me, if we get out there and the snake's gone, you're still going to have to pay us for our services. And I was like, well, I don't know that I want to do that. And I didn't know if I could trust them to remove the snake without harming the snake. So I hung up the phone, and, I knew that several different options were probably going to be a repeat of what had happened before. They were probably going to come and not have the consciousness that I was looking for. While I'm sitting there trying to think about what to do, and I'm just outside calling in spirit. I'm just channeling some information. Renee, you would have said, help me, Rhonda. That would have been your calling in all spiritual helpers for a solution. It wasn't just a solution for a win-win scenario for me and the snake, but it was a solution that I could feel good about, that I knew I had redone this well. I was really summoning in a better experience that I could feel really good about, that also healed the original trauma, right? So this is a transmutation prayer. I'm calling in support to transmute this experience. And while I'm standing there in my prayer, calling in, this is probably, over 20, 30 minutes, and I'm just I'm giving myself time for the insights to come. This neighbor who had helped me 10 years ago, who still lived on my street, never see him. We barely ever see each other to this day. We just have totally different schedules. He is out for a run that day, and he's like doing his cool off lap, walking all the way down the driveway. We have a really long driveway that we share. And he's nearly at my mailbox. Like, I'm watching the universe saying, is everyone present that was here before, right? Are all spirits present and accounted for what previously occurred for this vibrational redo that I didn't have that language then? And I was like, whoa, like, he's right there. All he'd have to do, the only thing missing is his shovel, right? Because I'm here, the snake is here, and he is here. And that just was flooring me. But I knew, and all I had to do was say nothing. I just had to not call his name to ask for help, because that might have just recreated the same situation. So I had the opportunity of choice. Even though I still didn't have a solution, I wasn't going to call him into the equation. There's part number one of the redo, right? It's another piece of this redo. And I let him pass by, and he keeps going on his cool down lap and goes into his house. And I'm like, okay, I'm letting that go. I'm not choosing the door number one for a solution to this issue. And while I was sitting there, I was thinking of other people I could call. Not that I couldn't have dealt with this, but again, it's okay to admit that we are unskilled in something. I didn't, in the 10 years, practice like snake capturing and relocation, right? So that was not still in my forte. So I get this download to call somebody. All of a sudden I feel the energy of somebody who had done some landscaping work for me. And I thought, I don't know if he knows what to do or not, but he certainly works outside all the time. And that's what Spirit gave me. When everything else I knew wasn't the option, that was the one that I got a yes. So I track him down, and he shows up at my house in like another 45 minutes. Amazing that he's available. And he gets out of his car, and he's kind of been raised like as a farmer. So he's got this really relaxed, chill, very confident, capable energy. And he's just a good human being. And I told him the situation. I showed him where the snake was. At that point, I think I'd put a bucket over the snake, right? Because I didn't want the snake to just disappear, right? So the snake's there, but you don't know where to find it. And he got out of his, and I said, so what's your plan? And I told him the whole situation of what had happened before. And I said, and I need to do this differently. I want to do this differently. And he was just like, well, yeah. And I said, so what do you think you're going to do? And he had a cooler, like an igloo cooler, right, in the back of his car. And he gets it out, and he's like, okay. And he had no shovel. So I felt better already, right? We were on some kind of a different course. And he takes the cooler, and he goes and gets a little stick, and he just nudges the snake, who I'd been talking to, by the way, the whole time. And the snake slithers into the bucket, goes right into his cooler willingly. It was amazing, as if we were like snake charmers. And then I said, what are you going to do with the snake? And he said, well, I'm going to take it back to my house, my property, and I'm going to let it go by the creek with all the other snakes, so it can be a snake. And I was like, I couldn't get over what had just happened, partly because I had listened, in large part because I had listened the first time when it didn't go so well. And you could even say I might have had feelings of guilt or remorse, maybe some shame, like I could have made a better decision the first time. We all have that. We all have these moments of like, and you couldn't take it back. When the first snake was killed, I couldn't resurrect the snake, but I could make the intention that I would do it differently. And then 10 years later came this opportunity to do it differently, right? And from that experience, I saw that happen in my life many times after that. I saw many vibrational redos, people calling me, family members that began the same types of conversations in all those tangly karmic ways that they start to get rolling, right? And I could see those, and I could say, oh, this is reminiscent of a conversation we had a week ago, or 2 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, right? And I would see that, and I would feel inside myself the energy and the message of the snake, which is also transformation, that snake medicine. Snake was teaching me in every step of this way that you can do these different, you can do this differently. You can shed your skin. You can become a new version of yourself. You don't have to just engage the same pattern just because it's there. And so that snake example is just huge for me in my life. And then I think it speaks to the same frequencies of the Lemuria Atlantis, the 1776 happening in the US, but maybe a 1776 globally for the planet that's trying to liberate itself from these old patterns. Many people can probably connect with things that I'm the energy of what I'm talking about. And then I wanted to give a simple little example. So I gave you a personal example from my life. I've given some global examples of some redos that we're all going through and vibrational echoes. And then just before I got this podcast, of course, I was getting dressed and I couldn't fit, I just picked out something out of my closet, right? It was a purple sweater and I was all set to wear that. And then I got nudged to look at the podcast and listen to, again, what we were talking about vibrational echoes and vibrational redos. And do you know that was the same sweater I wore in the last podcast we had about vibrational echoes and redos? I mean, this is what happens when you have the language and the vision to connect the dots of your life, that nothing is random. Everything has meaning. And I thought, well, I could wear the sweater because I could make the point that I'm wearing it again. But because I'm also talking about always going to another level inside ourselves, allowing some growth, I thought, okay, then I won't wear the purple sweater and I will wear something else. That again, reinforcing the power of conscious choice. When you see these vibrational echoes showing up, you're the one that gets to say, well, do I want to wear the purple sweater? Do I want to invite the neighbor to help me deal with the snake again, with the potential for the same exact replay, right? Or do I want to create something new? In which case I have to create the conditions and the opportunities for something new to come in. Hence, my friend, the landscaper farmer who helped me with the snake, and a beautiful outcome for the snake. And the same thing, I'm not wearing the purple sweater because I wanted something to be different. I wanted to open up the opportunity for new energy to come through.
And just your story was so demonstrative too, Marie, about the consciousness, the evolution of consciousness and the duality and everything, in terms of your response. Even though you said you didn't define yourself as a more conscious person, you clearly were already on that track, because you were already considering that snake as a sentient being. And you were thinking about, okay, how can I deal with this situation and respect this sentient being? Whereas your neighbor's response was a fear response of, let's just kill it.
Right.
Right. And I just think that's such a statement about a lot of what's going on today in consciousness, in terms of not thinking about other people who have differing opinions or whatever. Is, wait a minute, this is a really divine sentient being too, who has a right to live and be the way they are, rather than thinking I'm just going to shut them down because I don't respect who they are or whatever. So I think that example was just beautiful.
So powerful in how you language that. Again, actually, Diane, tell me again, I feel like it's important to mention, what is your background? Speech pathologist, right? Isn't that your training from back in the day? But that's what seeded your consciousness and attracted you. And I want to link that into the language. When you don't have the language of sentience, how many people use sentience in a sentence every single day? Few people. Or our feeling nature, or this as an energetic universe. But people who listen to a podcast like this either already know this or are on the path to recover this language for themselves. And sentience is our first language. And so Diane's right. I think in all of us, especially those of us who identify as empaths, we already have this baseline of a feeling sentient nature. I didn't have to be awake to so many more things that I woke up to after that to know that snake being was a gorgeous, amazing being that had every right to be living and breathing and existing like I do, right? And it had a life and a life path and an energy and a purpose and a power. right? But you're right that my neighbor, in his lenses and whatever he was doing, probably, just in some kind of awareness of, I need to protect this family. So that was his lens. And he took the course of action that it was his instinct to take. But when you're disconnected from that sentience and you don't have the language, it's first nature to just go into your default patterning. And that's, I think, a lot of people's, like you said, in my example, it was to kill the snake. In people today, we have the shut it down, censor
Exactly.
that, make devalued, right? And these things, and the collective consciousness, to some degree, it's changing, but even as recent as the last few years, right? Most of humanity's gone along with that. It's okay to shut things down. If something's fearful, well, shut down whatever's making you afraid. And then they're justified in that behavior. And that just shows you the kind of lenses we're looking through. A lot of people are looking through that's okay, versus respecting the sovereignty of each being, animal or otherwise, right? These are big lessons. These are really big lessons. And the vibrational echoes are here. So for those people that are still believing that kill the snake metaphor, or shut down the narratives, or shut down people's right to believe what they believe and value what they value, that it should be shut down, I think some bigger vibrational echoes are happening and are on the way, because the snake did show back up in my experience to learn and redo this. And I think that kind of that invitation to transmute previous creations is a must now, to move into this new earth energy that many of us are feeling. And we talked about this before we got on this call, and maybe this is a good segue into another part of this conversation today, is that we are the ones participating in the change that is required, right? We are the ones. We can't just say, I hope somebody helps with all the censorship that's going on, right? We have to be participants where we empower ourselves to be uncensored, to be who we are, and to make choices every day that allow other people to be who we are. We have to make those changes. It's not something outside of ourselves, right? We can go to healing sessions. Well, I want each of you to weigh in on this, but we can say we have judgment as something we're working on, and we go to see a healer or a therapist or somebody to help us work through that. We can gain insights, we can gain some tools, we can actually be vibrationally and energetically worked on to release some of that. But at the end of the day, we have to be the ones that meet that intention for change. We have to participate in taking a different action step, or thinking a different thought, or like me with the snake, choosing something different, right? Yes, Renee, please.
Yeah, I would love it if Diane would repeat what we were talking about before we started the recording, about the realization you had when you were working on somebody. I think that's huge, because people have this picture of, if someone's working on them, they're getting healed, or they're talking to people, that there's two parts to that. I would love if you would repeat that, because I'd like to hear it again too.
Sure. And that the message came, it was certainly it was a reminder to me that actually came through the celestial team. It came from the celestial team. My team and the team of the person I was working on sort of chimed in and gave me this message. And it was about how healing has two parts, because it's a co-creation with spirit. And the receptive part of the, let's just call it a healing process, can be when the person, as Marie said, you get a session of energy work, and you just express your receptivity to allowing that energy to work with you. And the second and most important part, just as important as being open and receptive to letting spirit work with you, is also the expressive part, because that's the part where you take responsibility for your part of the healing. And so that may mean that you, rather than saying, well, I just got worked on, I'm all good, sort of thing, then you say, well, wait a minute, what's my part in this healing? What tools do I need to pick up to complete the healing? Because it's more than just that one receptive component. It's the receptive and the expressive working together holistically, so that's what completes the entire picture of healing.
And
Well,
I
and then
think,
oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say, I think as light workers, healers, grid workers, I mean, there's just so many names for this. But during this time that we are going through, we are demonstrating and bringing forth that example of, it's not the magical pill that's going to heal us and take away that headache. It's not the Band-Aid. It is going deeper. The work is to be done. This is the work that we are called to bring forth. So when I sit here and listen to everyone right now, so much goes through my mind with so many of my own personal experiences and lessons and heartaches. And the one word I come up with is that we're all born with wounds. And this is the magical time. These are the echoes of those wounds that we are healing within ourselves, because we're all healers. We're all here to heal our wounds. And when we do, we can share that with others. And I remember one of the first, oh my gosh, probably 20 years ago, I remember hearing, when I cannot heal in you what I haven't healed in myself. And so working on myself, I can therefore help work on others. But just even being here today with this group of us, that we are healing through these examples, through this energy that we bring together. And I think that many who are listening and watching are going to connect to this togetherness, this circle, this energy that creates the space of unity, because that's where we're really working to get towards. And we all have our wounds.
Right.
Well, I think what we're going through is very ancient too, because as you were talking, Lisa, again, I'm hearing the words, be the change you want to see in the world. And when we're talking about these echoes, it takes me back to literally creation, to the zit zoom, where there was a constriction and then an explosion out. And a lot of the old ancient teachings are about the tikkun, about coming to kind of cleaning up yourself and your karma. And I feel like we're going back through another great zit zoom where we're being constricted, yet in that constriction, the energy is building and it's going to expand out again.
Yeah.
That is the mastering the unknown, so we can go deeper to know our deeper self.
Yes.
And that is so beautiful, especially on a Zoom call.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I see the importance of accepting where you're at. Acceptance is one of those unusual words that I studied a lot. When you accept something, that doesn't mean you are condoning it or agreeing with it or that you like it or that you think you can change it. But acceptance, I think, is a part of neutrality. So when we come up against these wounds that we have inside of us, and we each have our ways that we approach each other for healing, and the acceptance of those wounds, even if they came from other lifetimes, especially if they came from other lifetimes, is part of that step of opening yourself up to be in the flow of healing. To that acceptance is kind of a letting go, I think, because otherwise you could resist it and you could say, this is not happening. I deny this. or whatever. And when you were saying, Wendy, about the ancestral wounds and all the stuff that we carried with us, which I was going, whose brilliant idea was it to carry all the wounds in the current body? Yeah, I need to talk to somebody about that. You know, so that's where my acceptance. Okay, I accept. And so in a situation like this where we're all talking, we accept each other. We don't have to know the details of our movies, the movie of our lives, in order to love and accept each other. Because we have that base consciousness, awareness of each other's sovereignty. And so part of that sovereignty is honoring the divine in each person. You may not understand where that other person is or what they're dealing with, but you don't have to have a full picture of it in order to give your acceptance and your love and your divine honor and stuff to do that. So I think this, when we're talking, is just so beautiful just to share.
Yes, so beautiful. Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
I just want to say that I think I know when talking with friends or family members that don't follow the same path that I do as deeply as I do also, as Marie was saying, in the language, you know, and the language that we use so easily and readily in this conversation of acceptance and sovereignty. And, you know, people just, there's so many that hear it. And again, here, I want to be healed, but there is that duality. And in Marie, the last marinade message was amazing in bringing about living that duality, you know, and bringing that together. And Renee, you're absolutely right on that acceptance. And that is such a concept, you know, because it is something that is so neutral. And to bring,
there's people that think that because I tried to define this with a friend one time, because she said, you're condoning it. No, I'm not. Well, you're saying it's okay. No, I'm not. When you accept something, you're just saying, this is how it is. And what better place to be in where you empty yourself of judgment?
Yes.
So that you can face it.
or instead of defending it,
Right.
or putting the blame outside, or not taking
denying it.
responsibility.
It's like a recognition of saying, yes, I see.
Perfect.
I'm trying to understand, but but there's no judgment attached to it. Because
a big part of your personal healing. And like what you were saying, Diane, about there's the receiving the healing from a person that you've gone to, whether it's energetic healing or discussions. And then there's the part where that's the passive part. And then there's the active part where you can, on your own, accept what's been given to you, but now finding your language to articulate maybe your new understanding or the new light that you see in it, or the new revelations that came to you because of this healing. So yeah, I think that's huge. And I can see that in all the healings that I have done, that there's two parts to it. And then there's the rising up in yourself with the new knowledge, with the new perspectives, so that you can continue on as a conscious creator, because nobody's going to do it for you. The first time I ever heard that Hopi quote, "We are the people we've been waiting for."
yes.
Oh, I mean, it was almost a shock to my system, because I was hearing stuff like, you know, nobody's going to do it. No one's going to come down and save this world. And in your latest transmission, I want to mention that I was like, wow, I mean, there were so many incredible revelations, but a big one is the ultimate alchemist, which is God's source, the God in you, the energy that you're made of, is the ultimate alchemist. And yet the energy of source is leading us to be our own alchemists. That's exactly what we're doing when we go to somebody for healing. Help me see this. Can you help me energetically? And we are moving toward that, being our own alchemists, which, because we're all connected, affects the other person, affects the collective. And so don't you just find that so quantum that God is, not going to go ding with the magic wand, which I have asked for many times. Isn't it easier if you just, like, where's your wand? It's like it's behind the desk, ding, no, that isn't how it's happening. And so sometimes I'm going, I'm tired of this, It's absolutely the only way it could be, because we are divine humans and divine creators. And so being led by that energy, however it looks for you and you and everybody, it's the same energy, which blows me away. God, the source of all, is teaching us how to be our own healers, and we're healing each other. We have conversations with each other, and we help each other see things and feel things and get clarity. It's so beautiful how that works that way.
And I just love the way this conversation is flowing, and how it's just always such divine perfection. I just wanted to tag on a little bit to what everybody's been saying about, especially Lisa, when you were talking about the wounds, and Wendy with how our ancestry plays into that, and the alchemical process that's going on, and what Spirit was saying to me, which I think can apply to other people too, in terms of the languaging and understanding this from an energetic healing level of saying, Spirit said to me, well, first there is awareness, and then there is acknowledgement, and then there is acceptance. And then if you can go to the next level beyond the acceptance, you embrace it. And when you embrace the information, it means that you are understanding it from the level, let's say, of your soul and your higher self, which then gives you the ability to move into appreciation, because you can see it from the higher level for which it was intended. So you go from that initial awareness through that whole process of coming to appreciation. And for me, involved in that, I call it karmic looping, was the part of forgiveness was big too, because it was the forgiveness part of myself and others involved in saying, in the recognition of forgiveness means that you choose not to carry that energy any longer and to burden yourself with it. And that to me was the big factor that allowed me to move into the place where I could appreciate someone who I had initially perceived had wounded me. Then when I could see it from that level, I could say, wow, that was just amazing. If that person hadn't done this, then I wouldn't be where I am today, kind of thing. And I just thought that was pretty incredible.
I love how you said that, Diane, and I was taking it one step further, because you said appreciation. Notice that you said awareness,
Gratitude.
all A's. They were all A's. Awareness,
Yes.
Acknowledgement,
acceptance, and the further step for me is that in the forgiveness is I'm the one that interpreted how the scenario went down. So I'm the one that was interpreting it as, abuse, betrayal, or whatever you want to call it. And so beyond that step is, that's how I interpreted it, how I responded to it. The other person guaranteed sees it completely differently. You know, they look at their intentions or whatever, they see it completely differently. So I let go of my interpretation and my response to the degree that I could recognize that the other person, you know, had a completely different experience, you know, unless that, you know, they're into doing stuff like that on purpose to people. But so that's huge, because that's stepping into the big picture to see that we're all on this big playground and we're all having these interactions and things are going on, and react. And then you start rising above and becoming a conscious creator. Well, your understanding changes, your picture changes. And so it's, for me, getting to that last step of realizing that I can't definitively say that person did those things that I interpreted in the way that I saw and felt. My experiences are valid. I'm not invalidating it, but in the big picture, it's not that definitive because of whatever vibrational resonance that we co-created that. Well, you know, it's all, you know, you move beyond it and then you learn from it and you move on. So the acceptance is way up there, I think. Accept your humanity, accept mine, accept your divinity, accept mine. So when I accept the other person's humanity, in that that's how I experience the scenario, I'm also accepting their divinity and seeing that, you know, we're all in this movie, and that's, you played that part and I played this part. And so it's all, you can't do anything except honor whatever anybody is going through right now, because that's just where they're at in their movie in this second. And they're moving through it, whatever it is, because the energy of the alchemical God is guiding each one of us in that love and light to move through all the stuff that we don't like, to get us to where I know we're going to love being, because that's where we came from.
I think the forgiveness is the biggest part, because that's where the transmutation begins, is when we learn to forgive, and because we let go and we release. And only when you can let go and release that which was in you, there's room for transmutation. And when you said, you know, Renee, about the acceptance, it's because everyone is a mirror. So whoever we come in and we think something has been done to us, it's because it was there for us to look at, because we're all one, right? It's the one that is the multitude, right? There's the great paradox where we are truly one, but we are many. And look at all the amazing aspects of ourselves within every walking person on the planet.
Right.
And so that allows us all this multitude of forgiveness. And again, since this is our construct of time from beginning to end, right? And having this ability for transmutation to be the people that we have been waiting for.
That's
Yes.
where our power is. It's right when we become the alchemists or the transmuters, when we become the conscious participants or the creators, that is the game changer. When we do know that we are the one that we've been waiting for. And so often part of the conditioning of this world has been to give our power away to something outside ourselves, whether it's a wound or whether it's a healer of the wound that we perceive as something outside of us is going to do the work. It is a big step. It's a big ascension. It's a big leap in our consciousness when we remember ourselves again, to have the power inside us, to be the ones that have the wand. When we're waiting for God to wave the wand, God's like, I've been waiting for you. right? I'm waiting
Yes.
for you to wave the wand, right? And so I wanted to ask you guys, because it's so good to illustrate this to people, not only in the words and the language and the energy we all carry in our presence, that we know a little bit about this process of transmutation and transformation. We've been in it for a time, and we're more conscious about it now. But maybe I wonder if you would share a little bit of an experience, if some of you have this, kind of like what it was like for me in that process where I was with the snake and I didn't like how it went. I felt the feelings of that were unpleasant for me the first time, saying that I wanted to do it again differently, not knowing if it was going to happen again, but setting that intention. But what I want to speak to is that moment where, because it was so clear, a snake was around the same bush. Spirit gave me an easier one to work with because it was so clear, a perfect match in the same place in my yard. And I could recognize, oh, this is that situation that I'm going to do again differently. Can any one of you call up a moment where you, in your journey of this greater awareness, right, and this deeper acknowledgement, right, en route to, yes, this acceptance, something where you had an experience and you recognized something?
Mine's a everyday experience in relationship with mother and daughters. And it really came into my awareness with the birth of my granddaughter, because I see in her this pattern, this innate response that has been hidden in me, that I have that same response. She's only 3 years old. So when I see her respond in this manner, it just shrills through me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, that is me. I responded the same way as a 3-year-old, and I remember it.
Wow.
And I see it in how I respond today in my 50s, but I didn't recognize it. It wasn't mirrored through my daughters, my sister, my mother, my cousins. I didn't see that mirror at so close of a, oh my gosh. So it has echoed through me. And in the echo, I see how I respond to other situations, like revolving around money, the way I feel about receiving it, earning it, becoming comfortable with it. I get that same response. And I get that same response when I am in a confrontation or trying to express myself. And I've been married for 38 years. So in communicating with my husband, I have learned in 38 years, as well as him, for us to both communicate together. But it's that response, that reaction, behavior pattern that again shows up. And it wasn't recognized until, I'm going to say 2 years ago, when she really started in this response and reacting. And it is a communication of an inner communication, because she doesn't know how to communicate, but she's responding that way. So she's responding because it's something within her. It's her mind and heart that are, oh, I don't like what I did. How come they're not accepting it? So I'm going to abandon the situation and go hide and cower down and not confront it and not speak about it and not face it. So as I can learn this, I hope the communication can come about easily, that I can communicate it with my adult daughters, with my mother, who our communication level in just the last 2 years, which we've always had good communication, but in the last 2 years has evolved into this more sentient way of being able to communicate. So that's where it echoes within me, but it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's that big boulder. And so I'm like, wow, this is really there. Let's see, what am I going to do? And it's in the emotional part of me. That's just not a mental pattern, but it was created in that emotional part that I need to, and then there's more, you know?
It's a cellular, it's cellular,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And what I think is so magnificent is that you have a beautiful representation of how those cellular memories are passed down and the reactions that when we don't clean up ourselves, it truly has consequences for those before and after us. And how amazing is that you have a real life picture and recognition now of, wow, where did that cellular memory come from? Where, and that it's created like a mind pattern now that's rippled down through generations. So it's very fascinating to understand that our actions may have more to do with those around us and in our family lineage than necessarily just settling in with just us.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, it really is. And it's a soul level awareness, you know, and
Yes.
acceptance.
Yes.
And I'm going to use the word revolution because it's within myself, my own revolution, you know, of, and I was really blessed enough to know my father's mother, you know, my grandmother, for a couple years, and to see, I can reflect now on that, and through the Akash reflections, the Akashic realm that I meditate in and share sessions of, when I do it for myself, I just know I'm going to get such clarity, you know, and to help change that within myself, like you said, therefore, changing that ancestral cellular memory, vibration, the echo. Wow, I think I just healed something. Thanks, guys.
Right. And that's how it goes. That when you bring the awareness and the acknowledgement and the acceptance and the appreciation of that, it does. That's the alchemization. That's us as alchemists.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it's so interesting that the conditioning, and even how you described your granddaughter, maybe some of that pattern when there's something unpleasant, to turn away from it, right? Or hide from it in some ways. But what we are learning is if we just can have a presence inside us, which is also that sentience that is non-judgment. It is just like this fluid, eternal presence is our sentience that's connected to all things in everywhere, in every realm, in all directions of time. It is this place of expansive neutrality when we could just be in that place of awareness of our sentience. And then we can, instead of the old conditioning, which is to look at something that's unpleasant and want to turn away from it, it actually empowers us and gives us kind of an otherworldly courage to look at that thing we didn't want to see and be the one who's not just the participant, but the magic wand holder, the alchemist, that in the awareness and in the forgiveness or in the integration that happens through our sentient systems, that's part of the alchemy, is our sentient systems must activate so that we can have this in the moment, something just let go, something just released, because whatever that boulder was, either I don't feel it or it's lighter. That's the process we're all in right now in this transmutation. And I think it's extraordinary. And I didn't know that sentience was going to come in so powerfully, but also who's so connected with sentience, that free flowing energy, is the divine feminine. And that's another piece that's a vibrational echo. The divine feminine has been shut out of our world, just like sentience has, right? Just like intuition has. All those right brain, you know, heart-centered, intuitive energies, and that whole guidance system has just been kind of, just like we talked about, shut down, chopped off, and excommunicated. That's trying to come in and inform us. And if we would just let that part of ourselves, all of us have the divine feminine inside us, regardless of gender or identification or whatever, we all have it. It's a conversation with that part of ourselves that has all the solutions. And it probably, in the metaphors we talked about today, isn't a shovel. It's not like something that we're going to whack it, right? No, the solutions are much more fluid, much more gentle. And a lot of times we make change really hard. We make it be the boogeyman in the closet. We make it be this, you know, this demon or something that we have to overcome or vanquish in some kind of super epic heroic soul's journey kind of way. Sometimes it's just being willing to have a conversation with it. And I think Diane, maybe in one of our roundtables, but you've talked about, sometimes we just need to pour 2 cups of tea and have tea with the aspect of us that is showing up in the mirror of somebody else. What did you want to tell me? What did you want to show me? So that we can bring this to some kind of healing and feel better inside of ourselves, because you are a part of me, whatever that wound is. So having a tea, I know that this could be taken out of context. I'm sure some professionals could be like sounding some alarm bells to say people can heal by having tea with their wounds. But when you enter the level of spirituality and the level of energy, I do believe it is the big healer. It's one of the ways that we can have this alchemy and we can facilitate it into our lives. Yes, Renee, please.
Yeah, so I was, as you all have been talking, I've been finding a deeper level of acceptance, and that is the acceptance of yourself, exactly who you are. And that was one of the biggest things that I've dealt with the last few years, is when you step out to be who you are, make the decisions you make, and you're getting flack from people around you. You know, they because they don't understand that my life pattern was, then I would doubt myself. And so in order for you to really stand in your sovereignty, there has to be total, full acceptance and appreciation and embracing who you are. And for me, I have never had a problem with trusting my heart. I know my heart. Nobody knows my heart like I do. And when I say something like I would never hurt a fly, I would never hurt anyone on purpose, then I know what that feels like, and I know what that means to me. The problem for me has been others not, that me interpreting them not understanding me or not accepting it as something that I should not trust in myself. And so that self-acceptance is, and self-acknowledgement, and moving into your neutrality of, well, I'm okay with me how I am, and I can bless you even if you don't accept me for who I am. And I think a lot of people are going through that right now, because we've, you know, like I was raised to believe that it's more important what other people think and feel about me than what I think and feel. Because I would hear, what are the neighbors going to think? What's the preacher going to think? What's your grandparents going to think? What's your teacher going to think? And so then all of a sudden you're like making sure that your behavior is acceptable all the way around. And it's based, your value comes from your external, your perception
And your life
of your, how you're interpreting them accepting you or not accepting you. And when you have a lifetime of it, I mean, it's difficult to stand there and go, you're okay with you right now, right, Renee? I mean, you're okay with this? Yes.
Because you're out of balance.
Even if I'm the only one that is okay with it, my foundation is my heart.
Yes.
And if my heart says I'm okay because I know what's in there. I know it's the love of all creation, the love of all mankind. Whatever I would ever want for me, I would want for everybody, to have their dreams fulfilled, to be happy, to do, you know, do what you want to do. So that foundation is what I have been anchoring more in me the last few years, to anchor it in me so that I can stand and walk in who I am, knowing that I am okay. Probably for the first time in my life. I mean, I've had moments of it, but to really stand in the fullness of who you are, that's not easy when all of us have lived through self-judgment and external judgment. Mm-hmm. And expectations from the outside, expectations from the inside. And in order to you know, so that's why I pray for every man, woman, and child as long as I can remember, because we are in a sea of humanity. And you can have all the talents in the world, but if you can't navigate through that sea, you're kind of in trouble. You know, you need to have that sense of yourself. And so you talk about appreciation and gratitude for all the teachers in my life, for all the songs that I heard that helped me in that moment, for all the books I happened to read this sentence in, and everything. People, I have this extreme gratitude for everything leading me to where I am and where I'm going.
So maybe appreciation is one of the key things. That was beautiful, Renee. I think a lot of people can resonate with everything you just said. We see ourselves in you, right? You reflect us back to us. And that feeling of also many people are living lives that are not their own. They're just the conditioned habits of the world around them. And we're in this process of reclaiming ourselves, our soul presence, who we are, and having to be okay with that, where our relationship with source, our relationship with Gaia, our relationship with our higher selves, and our relationship with our wholeness, right? That calling to wholeness and integration inside us needs to become paramount in these times, because when we're answering to everything else outside of ourselves, that are aspects of us that feel outside of ourselves, but we're not living from a place inside that's directing and kind of the conductor of a greater integration now. That's when you can get lost in the sea of humanity instead of being in the sea of humanity, but not being of that sea of humanity. And I think it's a powerful time that we're finding this way again, and it expresses differently. In each one of us, we have daily experiences, like every moment experiences where we're given an opportunity to see us either being our presence in that bigger part of ourselves that's integrated and strong and sovereign and powerful and empowered, or whether we're responding or reacting in some way that's not who we really are, but we're engaging an energy dynamic that has a fragment of ourselves in the other person. And we're really, that's us showing up, kind of doing battle with ourselves instead of the invitation is, and I like the energy of appreciation, because appreciation and our sentience, they're cousins, they're siblings, they're like cut from the same tree, right? They're fruit of the same tree, appreciation and sentience. And these are otherworldly skills that we've kind of been taught to either not know about at all or devalue in some way. But these are the most powerful skills that Source has given to us to transmute what seems unconquerable, like unhealable, the unhealable wound. Appreciation is so incredibly powerful. And you can approximate the direction you want to go in to that higher timeline, because that's what I want to maybe close this out on, these vibrational echoes and these vibrational redos. Partly the vibrational echoes show up in like oh, that doesn't feel so good. I want to make that better. That's when you're first becoming conscious of being a creator in your life and being the alchemist. You start wanting to redo, kind of undo, but really redo previous creations. But then we can also be the creators that are actually wanting to create the optimal timeline for ourselves, the optimal vibration, which is how we show up in situations where we might be vibrating at a higher level or different level than our family members. They don't understand us. But instead of buckling under the pressure or the tension in that, we actually take some deep breaths. We appreciate ourselves and how courageous we are in wanting to be different than we have shown up in the past and engaged in all those trickier dynamics with family members and brought us into a lower frequency. Part of these vibrational echoes and redos are really a vibrational invitation. Let's do this a little differently. Even if you don't even speak when you're with these people for a visit and you have tea, but you don't say very much, but you're confident. You're breathing and you're knowing yourself. You are transmuting something you have not been able to transmute in many times past. You are in the sea of confusion or anger or projection or whatever's going on. And you're calm as a cucumber because you're choosing to be. These are the opportunities that we have. Yes.
I think that it came to me in a new way, is that we're the ones that have to empower ourselves.
Yes.
And that's part of stepping out in your sovereignty. I mean, you can know you are, but for me, I'm learning what that feels like and what that is and what that means. And we talked about, Marie, that my boundaries are inside my sovereignty. And so, and it can be done in a loving, caring way and not a back off,
Right?
Yeah. So we're the ones that empower ourselves. And that's huge, because I didn't have that consciousness for a long time. I was always geared toward the other person's experience, what's going on in their life and their experience of me. That focus became more important than my own experience and my own focus in who I am and what I was feeling. I made what they were thinking and feeling more important than what I was thinking and feeling. So I acted on that and disempowered myself. And so when you've done that for a really long time, you have to dig through the weeds and the thick roots to get out of there and feel the freedom in that light.
And Renee, I think if I can share, you use this language of being other referenced versus being self-referenced, or maybe we can say sovereignty referenced. If the world would do the work to be co-creators of their own journey with spirit, with source, right? To be cultivating their own sovereignty and respecting others' right to their sovereignty in the expression they want to choose, consciously or unconsciously, the world would be a different place. We could have that unity in diversity again, right? We could have diversity in the unity again.
Absolutely.
We are moving in that direction. And like we've brought up forgiveness today, a lot of people, again, in the skewed perceptions that we've all adopted in this realm to try and survive here each lifetime we've come, is that forgiveness is like letting people off the hook or whatever. That's just another, I think, distortion of the serpent, that biblical serpent energy, to disempower people on the road back to their wholeness and their sovereignty. So if forgiveness is a tool to help us get back there, appreciation is a tool to help us get back there, and the serpent kind of weaves it as a way that it's a weakness or that we're losing power somehow by finding ourselves again. We are having to learn how to let people have their own experience. And I can self-admit that, for one, and earlier in my journey, especially when I was waking up and I was understanding these principles, of course, I wanted to share it. So I was trying to give it to everybody, but overdoing that at times too, over giving my excitement that I thought would help them course correct what I had deemed imbalanced in them. And what I've learned over time is something that happens too that's very healing, is when I give myself permission to be myself and be whatever that is in my world, I have to give them permission to be themselves. It doesn't mean that I sit in a lot of participation, like experiential things with them. And that means I might go to lunch less with people that I'm not resonating with so much. And it doesn't mean I have to have a big confrontation about that. It's just resonance, like appreciation, like forgiveness, is a subtle but mighty tool. And when you listen and say, I'm just not resonating with where that person is right now, but I don't have to judge, because in my sentience, I'm in non-judgment. My sentience recognizes their sovereignty and it recognizes my sovereignty. And we don't have to have these big battles that we perceive like, how am I going to get out of the life I'm living to be able to better move into the life I want to be living? It's all about these vibrational alignments and vibrational choices that are empowered by vibrational appreciation and using some of these tools that we're talking about today. And it's no one step. There's elements to the steps, but it's just being conscious in everything that you're doing and moving in the direction of your higher timeline and the higher soul presence that you have inside. Yes, please, Diane.
I just wanted to add one more little thing. This was a big wake-up call for me when I first started to do energy work with people. I thought that it was my responsibility, if I had been given this gift of helping and starting to intuitively receive information about things that were going on with this person, I thought I was like, I'd be thinking, oh my God, there's a train wreck coming. I'm supposed to help them avoid the train wreck, sort of thing. And Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and said, wait a minute, what if you knew that that train wreck was the very thing they needed to catalyze and change their lives? Would you want to take that away from them? So you can give them some tools, and if they want to pick up those tools, like Renee was saying, and take action and do something with them, that's great. But it is not your job to intervene in that way and try and stop what your perception is saying. It's, oh, that's terrible, because that could be the very awakening their soul is needing and looking for.
Yes, that they've actually summoned that in and you're getting in the way.
Exactly.
Right? There's all different kinds of healing and healing crises that come into people's lives. And sometimes, again, we are our best teacher, healer, and instrument for the divine when we are our sovereign, sentient soul self, right? And the same thing, what you said, you had that awareness come to you and that those experiences, Diane, and I had something similar where I think for the past couple of decades have been correcting this misperception in my spiritual astigmatism that I need to be an assistant in correcting other people's distortions. Oh, that's a big one. When you feel a responsibility to correct other people's distortions, even if I was doing it from a spiritual perspective, that's not allowing them the space to be their sovereign expression of whatever they're choosing. What I think what's important that we're saying here at the end of this podcast is that we can choose how much we want to interact with that. We can choose how much we want to, be exposed or engage with that. Engage is a good word. How much do you want to engage with that energy? With judgment comes because we feel pulled and like Velcro, that we have to Velcro ourselves to that person's choices. We are not Velcroed. That's not sovereignty, right? So when we unvelcro and when we release ourselves from that experience and we do start to give ourselves permission, you've been invited to a lunch for work. It's highly encouraged that you be there, but it is entirely voluntary, right? These are these moments where you say, that is in my downtime, that is in my off time. There may be consequences if I do or don't go to that lunch meeting. But how am I really feeling today? And what vibration timeline, what vibrational energy do I want to inhabit in my day? That's not it. So you don't go to the lunch, right? And you make the choices that you feel good, that you're in alignment, or you do go to the lunch and you say, because of all these things, I am in alignment with going. I will attend this. And because I'm consciously choosing it, I'm still showing it up better than if I was unconsciously feeling forced or coerced to be in that experience. And you can insert work or family member, spouse, child, parent, anyone for that same kind of interaction. So I think I just want to say, and then I want to hear from you, Renee. I just want to say, I think we not only have this awareness coming back into our language, that we have a lot of vibrational choice in these vibrational echoes and these vibrational patternings and redos. And then we also have to give ourselves permission to allow other people those experiences while we allow ourselves our own experience, right?
Well, then I would say that, that's a big lesson for me too, Marie. I had that I felt responsible for pointing things out to people that they should see, right? But then when I learned how to live in the big picture and disengage from the energy game, then I realized that I was engaging in the energy game by appointing myself a committee of one to instruct them, right? But disengaging from that energy game is the allowance of the other person and where they're at. And I learned to say with my kids, well, let's, XYO, examine your options. Like, what are your options? Instead of like, come here and I'll fix everything. You are facing this. What are your options? Because I wanted to teach them to find their own solutions. Let's see, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And so the whole disengaging from that energy game and only being the mirror for what you are, like what you said, Wendy, about We are all mirrors. And when you take responsibility for everything you think and feel and do and say, then, and you're taking personal responsibility, then you're not going to project on someone else that the reason why you feel like this is because of them. Because if you can't take personal responsibility, then the only thing you can do is project on someone else. So being that sovereign person and taking responsibility for everything I feel, you know, I can see that I'm the one that interpreted that little scenario with that other person. I'm the one. So I'm going to take responsibility for that and look at it and say, where do you need to heal that? It has nothing to do with them. Everything to do with me and how I interpreted it, how I responded. So in that big picture, when you know you disengage from the energy game, then you do allow everybody to have their own stuff and be uncomfortable with you or be mad at you or whatever, but you can still love and support them and say, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Come here, I'll give you a hug. But you're not going to take over for them, which is, I think, a lot of what empaths like to do, because our heart goes out to them. Here, let me take your pain away.
Right.
I did that. I tried to take everybody's pain away.
And the one who loses is you. I mean, the one who loses is you.
And them. Remember,
And them.
I heard the term white magic. You know what black magic is? Ill intentions. White magic is you have this big heart and you rush to rescue the guy that's in the gutter, but you don't realize that his spirit put him there and he needs to be there. No, you take him out of there and you take that lesson away. That's white magic. It's the good intention. So I heard that a long time ago, and that really made sense to me. And
Yeah, no kidding.
Learned the difference between, and
And
the
even-
whole thing, disengaging from any kind of energy game. You just project your love, your compassion, and be the mirror. And if I was to meet either of you ladies, then there would be no like energy game stuff going on that you need energy from me and I'm going to need energy from you. There's just this continuous flow of love and acceptance and honoring each other, because there's no like neediness or any of that. And I heard a beautiful thing from a lady, an Australian lady, that said, when you're conscious, you're generating energy. When you're unconscious, you're consuming energy.
Wow.
That's huge. That really impacted me. I just heard that day before yesterday, and it's like, wow, that's the energy game. When you can't like own your stuff and say, okay, I'm going to look at this, then you have to be projecting on everyone else and wanting them to take responsibility for how you feel and how you think. So the disengaging of that energy game is huge.
It's huge. It is huge. And I think we've shared so many things, the authenticity, I think, that we share, and the people, when we are connected with our hearts and we are in this higher timeline, this space where we're not coming from need with each other. We're coming from a place of, in my sharing with you and in the receiving I receive from your sharing, I'm expanded. There's this understanding. And that's what I hope that these roundtables do, is that they allow people just to spend time in the energy. It doesn't have to be the exact words that we're saying. For some people, it will be. But for some people, it's just spending time in this beautiful co-creative space that is a timeless living energy that is who we really are. This is New Earth, where we come together sovereignly, respectfully, honorably, creatively, and with a sense of empowerment. And I think anything less than that shows you where the energy game is showing up, where people can't allow other people's sovereignty. And I still learn about that in myself, especially as a parent. Where am I disempowering my kids, or, not empowering them to be who they are? We could ask ourselves these questions. And the vibration that I kind of want to round out on is that we've talked about vibrational echoes and vibrational redos of things that maybe haven't felt good to us, that we have this awareness and we carry some shame or guilt or tension about. We can also transmute that or alchemize that into being echoes or mirrors of sovereignty. We can be echoes or mirrors of empowerment, or people who seek truth and seek wholeness, that we can be embodiers of that energy. And when we're in a dynamic with anybody where the energies tangle up and twist around, and we can experience that still. If we are knowing ourselves as these embodiers and mirrors and echoes of sovereignty, it can help us make a better choice in a moment where we're just about to get tangled. No matter how conscious we are, there are still those that we would engage in the energy game, that we would still tangle with, and which just create more opportunities for vibrational redos. If you're going to have to redo it later, why not do it now? Right? If it's waiting later, why not that just become your now? There's going to be some time where there's something that is uncomfortable, where you have to be your higher self when a lower self of you wants to engage something else that someone is doing or saying or being. So this is the power. It's one of the greatest powers of our time. And I think the feminine energy wants to come inside all of us to help us flow through situations that we might feel otherwise we needed to get out a sword and thwack people on the head because of what we perceive them doing that's unacceptable to us in some way. And we're judging that. And then making the choices, the experiences we want to vibrationally inhabit. Like, do we go to that lunch? Do we not go to that lunch? Do I take that phone call? Do I not take that phone call? Do I respond to the email in a moment of anger, or do I wait a day or two, right? These are the choice points that show us where we're standing in our sovereignty or we're sitting in our cesspool of reactive victim consciousness somehow. So, I mean, these are epic times. We could say they're fun times. It is pretty phenomenal that we have this level of awareness in this timeline to be able to affect this amount of change in the world and in our lives. Our power is returning to us. The question is how are we going to use it, right? And people get to see reflected in their behaviors every single day how they're using their power, whether it's conscious or unconscious. If we keep standing in our sovereignty and choosing better feeling thoughts or actions or behaviors or feelings, at the end of the day, I can still say, I really appreciate myself today. I did a really great job. Sometimes I won't go on, this is a long podcast, but even with animals, I have a little farm that I call them, right? I've got dogs, cats, we've got deer in the backyard. We've got all kinds of wildlife, and they all want my attention because they know I can hear them. I'm sure you feel this all the time, Diane. I mean, they chirp there all the time, and I can get tangled up in all of that, right? But when I adore all of them, but even with beings that I deeply love, I can get stressed just trying to connect with all of that energy too. And they're full-time 24/7 ready to connect it through the sentience at a higher level. So even the good stuff can be overwhelming to us, and we might even react because we get overwhelmed with all that's ours to do. We are in a time of great squeezes and great challenges, but at the end of the day, when I take a moment, I take a breath and I just sit on the floor with my dogs for a minute. I just take a minute and I sit with them, and I'm not racing. That 1 minute, everything resets, and I'm like, thanks. And they're good to go. And at the end of the day, I could say, I'm so glad we had that moment today, or that I made those choices. And when I can say that more days than not, that I feel good about the choices that I made a more positive impact on others and inside myself. This is also part of these times, I think. So it's very powerful to be conscious beings willing to be in the allowing and the acceptance and the appreciation, even though the sea swirls around us, right? The floods of all kinds of waters are around us. We can be our light, even if we're in challenge too, right? We can be echoes of sovereignty and grace, even if we're challenged, just by taking a breath and intending that. It's powerful, you guys. Thank you, each one of you, for being with me. And I want to thank our listeners who spend this time with us. Like, we're here walking this journey with you. We're here, recovering our wings and finding our sovereignty again, and finding ways to, transmute being a reactive creator into a conscious creator, even in unpleasant situations that look like it wasn't a positive outcome. If you're conscious in that dynamic, there's a positive outcome. The energy shifted because you were there. Sometimes that's exactly why we're here. And there's power in everything that we do. So join us at Whole Soul Mastery on your favorite social media platforms. And we will see you again for another Divine Feminine Roundtable, another Sounds of Circles Roundtable very soon. Blessings, everyone.